What can't you unsee? The night prior to starting high school, I witnessed an accident where a drunk driver rear-ended a camper. The propane tanks on the camper erupted and trapped the people inside. I tried to help, but in moments the heat was far too intense. The scene was ghastly, and to this day I vividly remember the sounds and smells as well as the sights. The camper was of the type that sits in, or on the back of a pickup truck. Only exit was that engulfed rear door. I jumped on the hood of the pickup where the father of the family was beating on a little window trying to get his kids and dog out. I tried to yank it out by the frame till I cut my fingers, then I had to jump down from the heat. Poor thing. The arrow and the FedEx logo. Bad decision. Agreed. Why did I look? Question mark. My friend's college-age brother ducking their mother on the couch downstairs. To expand, I was 13. It was the first sleepover I'd been to in a while and the last time I ever went to this particular friend's house. He wanted me to come over cause his brother was visiting. I woke up around 2 AM and started downstairs to get a bottle of Mountain Dew. Heard some sounds one might associate with porn. Thought the brother was awake watching porn. So the way their stairs were set up was the stairwell was a solid wall except for one little rectangle opening that was head height, that was like a little window / shelf, and it looked down into the living room. There he was, plowing his own mother on the couch. May or may not have stood there and watched for about 15 minutes. Found out some years later that he was also ducking the younger sister, who 2 years younger than we were. I and my friend were both 13. Let that sink in. The family was never weird either. Like there were never any signs and the brother was always cool when we were growing up. Jesus. That's ducked up. Who drinks MTN Dew at 2 AM? Me. I've had an ongoing problem for years. Don't judge me. D equals. Also that was pretty much the only thing they had to drink if I recall. Besides nasty city tap water, and I was a country kid. My mother, who is the most sheltered woman on earth. I'm surprised she had 2 kids considering how they are conceived. She fucking freaked when I wanted to leave my birth control pills in the shared bathroom when I came to visit at age 22. Told me to take them away from her sight. I went to the basement to do laundry and there, hanging up to dry, was a red lace one-piece teddy, crotchless. Well damn. So your mum's still in the biz? Your parents having sex, her on top and you walking in to see her back toward you, and dad's balls slapping and mom's ass flapping. I promise you, you can never unsee that. What happened to you, lad? Trust me, you cannot unsee that. The stains of blood and body decomposition on the mattress where my sister killed herself. That's a tough one. I hope you're doing well. Walked into a friend's place a few years ago. He's all happy and tells me to check these pics out as he hands me a stack of photos. First photo on the top of the stack is of his girlfriend and their dog engaged in a sexual act. For the sanity of everyone else in the world, I'm going to leave the description at that. I threw the rest of the stack at his face and ran out of the house. Stupid me thought they were pictures of a camping trip or a birthday party. Never went back. Edit. Clarity. WTF. I've seen some very illegal pornography in the context of working for an internet company and doing DMCA takedowns as part of my job. That's how I know there are 2 very different types of child-based imagery. The kind that could very well be innocent or at least has kids sitting alone just being kids. And then the kind where a child is clearly interacting with an adult in a sexual way. The latter is way more disturbing. The one image that threw me for a loop was a naked sleeping baby with semen all over it. The baby couldn't have understood the situation in any way and seemed to be healthy / unhurt. But it was disturbing to imagine the situation behind the picture anyway. I'm in a similar boat, moderating forums with hundreds of thousands of users a decade ago, and the gore / child porn bombs that people would post just on the off chance of ruining someone's day was insane. Literally hundreds of images, one after the other. Luckily I didn't have to deal with it often, as I wasn't part of the team designated for such situations. But things still slipped through the cracks, requiring elevation to the proper team. My sister in the ICU after a suicide attempt. I hope she's doing better now. And you, as well. She is doing much better. Thank you. It was almost 10 years ago, but some things stay with you. I don't really want to give a sob story, but looking at my 4-year-old sister after impact of a solo car accident, the image of her turning her head and having glass embedded in half of her face is permanently etched into my mind. Is she okay now? This was like 10 years ago, so yeah, she got over it, and the glass itself wasn't too damaging. Perhaps a scar or two at worst. r/vor. No wait, r/immobile is much worse. This is just disgusting. I'm sorry, but people that take pleasure in forcing themselves into obesity, what the duck? When I was heavily depressed, I would see skulls and flesh in weird places. A smudge of ink, gravel, and leaves were places I saw them. It was like my brain was wired to find them, like how everyone finds faces and everything. A couple of times I would close my eyes when thinking extremely negative thoughts and see bloody flesh. It's really weird how mental illness can change your perception of reality, whether you can or cannot see it. I can find hearts in some weird places. I was outside my dad's house with my stepmom and randomly said, after hung outside and looking at a wall that was around 4 feet by 8 feet of concrete, "Hey look, it's a heart made of paint," kind of confused her. My brother's yellow skin when dying of liver failure. 2 girls, 1 cup. Heard of that? Made me want to gouge my eyes out. I can't eat chocolate ice cream without thinking of it and gagging internally. Pieces of little kids scattered around an outdoor market in Iraq. Good old Iraq. I saw a man getting assassinated in his car. I remember the way his head hit the front window of his car and the blood scattered. Spent about 5 years there, all told. Still have dreams about that place. Rainbow dash in a jar. Don't Google it. Take my word for it. You don't want to know. Sadly, it's not just Rainbow Dash. Coming onto figurines in jars is a pastime for some. A Serbian film. I was just telling my friends about this movie that made me have to watch cartoons afterwards just to get over the trauma. Maggots crawling out of the sink in a hospital I spent 3 months at. I barely remember most of that experience, but the image of maggots is permanently ingrained into my brain. My grandfather's dick. I was driving with a friend one time to go see our school's basketball game. It was a smooth ride until right about the end, and I see my friend winding up for a sneeze. I didn't think much of it and focused on the road, but then she sneezed, and it was a pretty wet one. I looked over and her hand was absolutely covered in snot, so I quickly tried to look for a tissue, and while I was looking I hear a slurping sound. Thinking something was wrong, I turned to her and I can see her trying to slurp the snot. It was one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. That was the one that made me cringe the most so far. Find my husband dying after an accident with livestock, sitting there waiting for Lifeline. The fear in his eyes as he was bleeding out. They saved him and is doing really well. I just can't unsee it, and it makes me cry every time. That's great that he's doing better. One man, one jar. I already know where this is going. There's a famous photo on DeviantArt of naked women in a pool of really big worms. Having those giant worms go into various holes that worms should not go in. Unfortunately, I forgot what it's called. That's like an entire category. There was a picture of just a hand and a bit of wrist laying in some rubble at ground zero. There was also a small rectangle of a Hershey bar. Just one piece, but it was just perfect and the name was so clear. Couldn't eat Hershey bars for years, and even now I have to flip them over so I can't read the words. John and Yoko's new album. John has a bigger, more supple ass. I'm not even gay related. Is it normal for nipples to point downwards like that? Like Yoko's nipples? / because I've seen a fair number of everyday human tatars and none of them pointed in that direction, lol. They were ashamed and wanted to get away. After my father had passed on about 6 years earlier, I was visiting home on leave. I got up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. In the hallway a partly open door, 2 inside feet pointed down, 2 outside feet pointed up, on a mattress shaking up and down. In 19 years, before I went off to basic training, there was never an indication of sexual interest beyond 4 children living in the home. But until that night, mom could still have been a virgin. Even though I could reasonably accept otherwise, I had no proof. Wait, I'm sorry if I sound stupid, but can you explain? My brain hurts. I would need context, but I heard it used when someone has had a lot to process mentally that was difficult and may have seemed like blows to their belief system. Some terrible person posted the police photo of Robin Williams after his death. I couldn't have seen it for more than a second before scrolling away, but the image is burnt into my mind. I was waiting at a bus stop in New York City when a guy tapped my shoulder from behind. I turned around to see that he's pointing down to something. I looked to see if I dropped something, but it turned out that he was pointing at his micro dick that was barely hanging out of his sweat pants. Proceeded to walk the rest of the 30-some blocks back to my dorm. My mom's bedside table drawer and the items inside. Then don't go snooping. Greater than sign. Greater than sign. I was at a birthday party and was about to crash into my mate's bed. Walked into the room and one lass was damn near up to the elbow into another. Just ducking. Forearm and everything. I've never seen fisting. It was not something that entered my mind when thinking of porn. But it was always something I assumed was porn specific. To see it in living color and to be so invested in it. This was 15 years ago and I still remember it vividly. Lol, and what makes it so extra weird for me is I knew the 2 women involved. One was petite feminine and one was not butch, but very much masculine and brash, but leaned more into heavy hippie rather than butch aesthetic. But it was the petite one who was elbow deep. Talk about eschewing expectations. Images of trypophobia. This. My older brother getting humped by my dog. The video of botfly larvae being removed from a chimp. Or really any botfly videos. I keep watching them, but I hate them. That's one's brutal! Exclamation mark. My first glimpse of goats. What is THT? The scars on my arm from when I was depressed. Let it be a reminder that you are still here and that you hopefully overcome that phase of your life. Maybe even get a tattoo over them. Dead people. A pulsating worm sac in a sewer made eating difficult for days. The squirming larvae that we took out of my dog's paw after it got infected. Used a pair of vibro tweezers to take them out and burned them with alcohol. I discovered what smegma was via Google Images. What is THT? Every single one of you 3. R/P. No need to click on that. Click. Oh duck no. All of the bad shock images that circulated the internet for years. Furby porn. I was making a joke about Rule 34 with my partner and I was like, what if? And he was like, babe no. But I did anyway. Regret. The word mom in the Wendy's logo. I visited a suicide patient, guy in my unit's wife military. She shot herself in the face. Not only seeing everything, while there her mom had apparently lost it and was there showing us pictures of the wound site. I still see her face in my sleep a lot. My dad and my stepmom going at it like rabbits in spring with her mom and her 4-year-old sister in the living room on Halloween night. Does anyone wanna trade eyes with me? For details sake. She's 21 to 22 and has 40 something. Not a good example for his 4 kids who almost all have different mothers. In front of her mother and her child. / you only really have 2 options in a scenario like this. Put it in a cage or kill it with fire. Fortunately they were in separate rooms, but the fact that we had company over and they think it's acceptable to do that when guests stay the night. I watched officers from 4 police jurisdictions descend on a man who was having a mental breakdown and was only a threat to himself. One of the officers shot him. They then let him bleed on the street for nearly 10 minutes before calling an ambulance from the hospital across the street. Everyone in the office building watched as he convulsed on the sidewalk because shooting him was easier than dealing with his mental issues. I think I've heard about this. This happened in the last few months. No, this one was about 4 years ago in downtown Atlanta. It didn't get any news coverage. When my son was born, his head came out, then one arm, and the one arm flailed around for a moment before the rest of him was shocking. I witnessed a man commit suicide. I already made a post about it in r/teenagers. This post, your name is interesting. Is Ko your last name? It is indeed. Faces everywhere. My traumas. Watching a guy fall out of a helicopter. Who? E621. The pain. More than one suicide where they used a butcher knife. That and burned bodies. The smell stays with you for days. I'm in the first responder field, so it happens. Shattered glass on a woman's neck that immediately died when she hit a tree in front of me. I remember using iFunny way back when in like 2013 they had just added the ability to publish GIFs and videos. Turns out this mixed with a lack of moderators and bots made it quite the place. I still remember seeing a lot of ducked up shit on that app during that period. But the two that stick with me the most are two gifs of a dog being beaten to death with a shovel and a teenager getting his head watermelon by shotgun blast. The look on my mom's face when she found out her sister had been hit by a car. Also when I first saw my aunt after that accident. My dad on the floor, turning blue as I was doing CPR trying to save his life. Almost a year later. And I still can't stop thinking about it. Last time I saw him alive. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.